Good evening. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Dr. Foley, roll call.
President Reese, members of the board, please let the record show that all members are present.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And I just want to offer our condolences to the family and students and friends of the student that we lost last week at Higley High School. With that, we're going to go on to the approval of the agenda. I move that we approve the agenda as it's presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Dr. Foley, we're going to go ahead and go on to the superintendent's report.
President Reese, members of the board, we're going to start tonight with a quick update on the elections results. They're going to pull up here a little snippet of what we received last night. As you know, we have had a very important bond election on our ballot. Last night, we received communication from our elections official that shared with us this little graphic right here. One of the things they shared with us in this email as well is being that this was a mail-in election, they're updating the ballots a little bit differently than they do in larger years with larger ballot items. One of the things they indicated is that tonight, probably at 5 o'clock as we speak, they were updating the results from this, as we see right here, was an update from the ballots that had been received before Monday. Tonight, they will update the results with what they received on Monday, and then on Thursday, what they received on Tuesday. We know from our election officials, we were a ballot drop box, that there were hundreds of ballots in there. Although we are hopeful, I think tonight, after they finally post whatever is posted from Monday, if we are still trending in not passed, we will be sending a communication to our community this evening or first thing tomorrow morning, indicating that these preliminary results show that the bond failed, and we will also discuss the fact that we will remain committed to supporting the challenges of a growing district, and will continue to bring proposals and ideas forward, and that we'll continue to stay prioritized on teaching, learning, and our students in this district. So that is an update right now. Obviously, we will stay tuned, but again, obviously, we're disappointed with the initial results. Okay, any questions? Okay, moving on to more important conversations or celebrations tonight, I'd like to invite Mr. Daryl Stengel up to the podium because we have state champions in golf in the house.
Thank you. Okay. So
Just before I introduce Coach Miles and he introduces the players, I want to say a few words about this group. At Williams Field, we always strive for excellence in every endeavor. I get teased a lot because I use the word dominate a lot, but the two go hand in hand, okay? And this group is a group that has embodied that. The seniors that are in this group have won 3 section championships, have been state runners-up twice, and this year won the state championship in Division II. That is the model of consistency and the model of consistent improvement that we strive for each and every day, and try to instill in our young people at Williams Field as they can go out and dominate the day. So without further ado, the men of the hour, I'm going to introduce head coach Rick Miles, who has been the head coach for all 14 years at Williams Field, and allow him to introduce the players that won the state championship. Come on up here.
So good evening, members of the board and Dr. Foley and Mr. Lotzenheiser and Daryl, thank you. As he said, I've been the coach for Williams Field since we opened up, and it's been my pride to build this program to where we are. We've got, Daryl talked about the 2 state runner-ups that our senior class has. We've actually had 3 in the last 4 years. So at the end of last year, we finished again, 2nd place. And the minute we walked off the golf course, the conversation began for what this year was going to bring, and that the preparation for 2021 was going to happen November 5th, and it needed to start then. And that no one was going to hand us the state championship. We were going to have to work to get there. And so I credit all these young men for their hard work in the off season. They played a lot of golf and a lot of tournaments to prepare for this. And, you know, we at the beginning of the season, I put us in some very difficult tournaments with some very tough competition, both here in the state as well as the board knows, we traveled to Texas and played in the largest, most prestigious high school golf tournament in the country. All of that prepared us, excuse me, for where we finished today. As I told these young men before we started the state tournament, we didn't win a single tournament this season. We've had seasons where we've entered tournaments and won everything we've been in, and we've learned from that, but as a coach, I learned from that as well, that I'm not so sure that always develops your players and gets them in the right frame of mind. And so I wanted us to have a very difficult schedule, so that one, they didn't get too full of themselves, because they knew what was at hand, and they knew that they were the odds-on favorite to win the state championship. And so we got a very tough schedule, and I really think that it paid dividends. We had a rough go of it in September. We played a lot of golf. Fall break came right at the right time, because when we came back from fall break, we played our best golf of the season right at the right time. And so I couldn't be more proud of these young men, and I'm going to introduce them to you here. So I think they're almost in order here. About the 5 that played at the state tournament that you see up there. Our senior, Rylan Johnson, he's in my opinion as a coach, he's once in a generation golfer. He's going to be signing with Oregon State here in about a week. So yes, thank you. He's our first Division I golfer to go on and play at the Division I level. He told me on the 18th fairway, he says, "Coach, I failed to get the job done." And I looked at him and I said, "Excuse me?" He was disappointed that he didn't win the state championship as an individual. And I can understand that. He worked hard. That was a goal that he had. He finished runner-up for the 2nd year in a row. But I told him, I said, "You got the job done. We are not here in this position we're in as a team if it's not for you." And so he more than got the job done, and he has left his mark on this team, on me as a coach, hopefully on his teammates as well. He's been my captain for the last 2 years. I've never appointed a junior captain before I appointed him as a captain, and the leadership that he has gone on this team has just been phenomenal. I cannot say enough about him, so I'll stop. Our next one is a sophomore, Ben Carr, finished in the top 10 at state, so he's coming back, be one of our leaders next year. Senior Brett Halliday. Brett came out and joined us this year. And if I could tell you how many times I wish he had come out earlier than just his senior year, I'd be well retired by now. But a fine young man, played number 5 for us for most of the year, and I know that the game of golf is better because he's in it. Eli Asalas, who is our junior, to be senior and to be captain next year, so he knows he's got some big shoes to fill, literally and figuratively, but I'm fully know that he's capable of handling the material or handling the job. Next is Tanner Doonan, a junior, came out to join us this year, and I know that he's going to be a big part of our team next year. The next to him is Trevor Lizack. He played number 3 or 4 for us most of the year. Again, a senior who's been with the program for 4 years and just rock solid for us as a team member. Next to him is Cameron. Cameron's another senior that's been with us for 4 years, just a great young man, and also played number 5 for us at times throughout the year. So look forward to what the future holds for him. Braden is next to him as junior, again, returning, be a key part of where we're going for next year. Next to him is Chase, freshman. In case you couldn't tell, his brother is a couple doors down from him there. Almost twins, but a couple years apart. But freshman, again, looking forward to him growing over the next couple years. And Connor is a sophomore again. Looking forward to seeing what these guys can do to ours. And next to them at the end there is my assistant coach, Mr. Trey Cox. Some of you might know him. He teaches at Chandler Gilbert Community College. He volunteers as an assistant coach and and has been with me. I coached his son at our program here and has been my assistant coach for about the last, around 5 or 6 years now, something like that. And it's just a great person to have around. And so I couldn't be more proud of these young men. It was a long season. It was trying for us at times. But we kept that goal in mind, and we knew what we needed to do to get it done. So we're more than happy to be here. In case you couldn't see it, our trophy's up there on the front table. Coach was saying it needs to be more centered. Ms. Reese, I'm sorry, he was saying it should be right in front of you. But anyway, so nonetheless, we're proud to add that to our program, but we're certainly not done. We've got work to do. We got more room in the trophy case that we got to fill up. So this is just the beginning. We're going to get more of those and hopefully be in front of you guys more in the future. So thank you for letting us come.
Thank you. As we continue with the superintendent's report tonight, obviously one of our other favorite parts of our agenda is the celebration of our points of pride. So tonight we're going to start with Centennial Elementary, and I would love to, yay! So I would love to have Mrs. Bradley and Mr. Verville here to help us acknowledge those who you want to celebrate this evening.
Yes, we're very excited to be here. So good evening, President Reese, Governing Board. We have quite the turnout, as is the norm with our Centennial family. We've got about 20 strong here right now, so very excited for our family to be here to supporting one another. It's awkward staying with my back to everybody, so is it okay if I stand to the side, or?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, take it.
Hello.
All right, well, you can start if you want to start with our student.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. We'd like to recognize and honor Mr. Everett Church, our student winner. So I'd just like to read what we have written about Everett. So when we speak of student growth and achievement, we understand that many factors need to come into this for this to happen. This is why we're so excited and proud to announce Everett as our Points of Pride winner. Everett has shown an amazing transformation this year, demonstrating the ability to have a growth mindset that comes from teacher, straight from teacher, where he now accepts his mistakes as opportunities to be a student and better person. Everett has shown amazing compassion and kindness towards others this year. He's often the first to encourage them to do their best, help them with their work, or even resolve conflict or disagreements. Aside from his amazing development in character and attitude towards school, Everett consistently improves academically. He's constantly setting new goals in math. He uses writing to show meaning and understanding, and he has found a new pride and excitement in reading as he recognizes that he can do a lot and go far. We are so proud of Everett and appreciate all the hard work he has shown this year and look forward to so many more successes. Congratulations.
All right, so for our teacher, for our Points of Pride, we want to recognize Miss Liz Garcia. So you want to come on up? So there's a lot we can say about Miss Garcia. She is a true rock star. She's taking on an unprecedented amount of responsibility this year in her program, and she stepped up every single time to meet the challenge, both with professionalism and optimism. When Liz is faced with some curves and life's throwing her some curves, she always has a smile on her face and has a can-do attitude. She is the embodiment of grit. There's nothing this woman cannot do. She's truly amazing. She's very kind and caring to everyone she interacts with. She's patient and compassionate with all of her students, and even with us as adults. So we go in and help sometimes, and she'll graciously tell us to do it a different way. And very patient with everybody, so we appreciate it because she knows what's best for her kids. Sorry to go off track a little bit. She has a passion for helping her students grow, not only with their academic goals, but also to help students acquire new adaptive skills and to learn how to communicate their social emotional needs. This year, Liz has demonstrated the ability to manage an influx of new students, teach and lead 2 student teachers, in addition to planning for students across multiple grade levels and ability levels. She facilitates and leads a large support staff that functions efficiently and effectively while maintaining the kindness and compassion that she has created in her classroom. When we say she has a very large support staff, it probably rivals that of a high school at an elementary staff. So she does amazing leading her team. Let's see, Liz also does an exceptional job of leading and supporting her cross-cap peers to ensure they are compliant, working collaboratively with their gen ed peers, and supporting one another and the students' needs. We are so grateful and proud of Liz, and we are so, so, so lucky to have you. So we love you and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Okay, so our next, Points of Pride will go out to our classified staff, Mrs. Lisa Verlada Erlinson. Thank you for everything. Mrs. Broadley and I wanted to give a shout out Miss Lisa works in Liz's class, and her class, or the entire team that Mrs. Broadley was talking about, is pretty much here tonight. They are an amazing staff. They are an amazing team. They put everything aside for these kids. So for just a huge thank you to all of you. So, but about you, this lady is one dedicated, committed, devoted, paraprofessional, teacher, educator, everything, and we are just so grateful to have her. So it is that for those reasons and many more that we are excited to announce her as Centennial's Points of Pride classified winner. With 7 years of service in Higley Unified, Lisa shows up every day to work as if it was her first. She's positive, focused, willing to jump in and do whatever it is needed for these students. Lisa is a true team player. She leads by example, sets high standards for herself, and is always there for her colleagues and other CrossCat teachers when needed. She's constantly building relationships with her students. It's amazing. Like, just come visit. Just come visit. Developing trust and routine so that these students can not only just succeed in class, but really in life. Lisa is a true professional, consistently developing her own practices, as well as just being flexible and dependable whenever we need her. We are so thankful to have you. Thank you.
Every so often we get a parent volunteer that comes in fresh. She's a kindergarten parent, and we are very grateful that we have roped you in and that you have committed to helping us out. And she is very revolutionary with some of the practices she brings to our PTO meetings, which is really great. So I'm going to just read a little bit about you and about why we're so excited to honor you tonight for our Points of Pride. So we are both grateful and excited to nominate Mrs. A.C. Trump as our Points of Pride Volunteer Award recipient. Through her gracious work outside the classroom and ability to step up and take on a significant role on our PTO, Mrs. Trump is trailblazing the importance and positive impact our volunteer community has on our students, staff, and school culture. Her work on PTO is both innovative and hospitable, whether it's revitalizing processes and streamlining forms and documents to make them both more tech-friendly and user-friendly, or by setting up delicious breakfast, lunches, and treats for our staff. Mrs. Trump is always there with a smile and a helping hand. In addition to the support and work on our PTO, her work inside and outside the classroom is greatly appreciated. She is creative, generous, and thoughtful as she has handmade decorations for celebrations, coordinated class events, and is always the first to contribute or donate materials or items for projects and other student needs. We are so thankful for all of Mrs. Trump's contributions and so happy that she is part of our Centennial family. We're so grateful for you. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Centennial Points of Pride. We are now excited to invite our administration, Mr. Mercado and Mrs. Reeves, up to celebrate our Santan Points of Pride.
Good evening. Good evening. Is it on?
Did you break it?
Sure. Or do I need to press it? Good evening, President Reese, board members, Dr. Foley, cabinet, community members. I am the proud principal at Centennial Elementary, and I am excited for this opportunity that we get to be here and celebrate all the awesome things that are happening in our schools and at Centennial. Want to celebrate. I was told I have the mic, it's not karaoke night, so it needed to stay the script. So here we go. Celebrating our student who is absolutely amazing, Mr. Joey Zamora. Come up here. So Joey is an incredible student leader at Santan in 5th grade. You can find him working hard, following the 8 habits, not only the 7 habits, but the 8 habits, and being kind to his peers. He takes pride in being a leader and exhibits leadership qualities on a daily basis. He values his school and has been seen pulling weeds in front of the school to keep the school looking nice. I love it. He truly does follow the 8 habits in and out of school and is well deserving of this recognition. Awesome job, sir.
Come on up here.
Next is our, I can go further. Chicken dance. Our next is Sarah Ballard, our certified staff member. Come up here, Sarah. So we had Spirit Week, so talk about just all-consuming, supportive educator, practitioner, advocate. You see Sarah Ballard in every role on our campus. She is the definition of a go-getter. She's willing to help anyone with anything at any time. She goes above and beyond for not only her students, creating extra curriculum, buying supplies, making lessons fun, quarterly parties, class store, but also her colleagues offering help every day, creating systems to alleviate stress, acts of kindness, regular praise, and so much more. She is a leader on our campus running IEP meetings. She is the staff lighthouse coordinator. She provides professional development opportunities with Leader in Me strategies and still goes above and beyond with smiles inside and outside of her classroom. This statement from the teacher says, "I look forward to working with her every day and know I can count on her."
So I said I wasn't going to steal the mic from him because it is a lot of fun, his favorite thing to do. But I was just at the door before I left school, and Mrs. Ballard is standing out there talking to one of the 7th graders who just got off the bus. And I was like, "Mrs. Ballard, come on, we got to get ready." And she's like, "Thank you." I was just about to cry. And I was like, "What happened?" And he was telling her, "Hey, Mrs. Ballard, do you remember how I struggled so much and everything that was going on at home? And you were like my mom. You were always there for you. You always made sure I had what I needed, and you always made sure I was getting my work done. And now I'm in middle school, and I'm doing great because of you." So that's just the kind of teacher that she is, and I'm sure many students would say that about her.
Next is our classified staff, Michelle Ryan. Come on up. It was about 7 years ago. This is my 8th year at Santen. About 7 years ago, I asked Michelle to come over from Mesa because she had some previous office experience in a previous role I had there as an administrator. And so she had lots of questions, and I had all the right answers. And so to this day, she's been just rock solid in our front office as an office manager, and this is what the recognition says here. Michelle Ryan is a team player and manages the front office at Santen in a professional manner. Michelle manages the front office and gets pulled to do duty in the morning, afternoon, lunch aid, and health office. Michelle stepped in and filled in for the health aide after she quit unexpectedly. She had to manage her job as well as the health office for an extended time to make sure the students were well cared for. She was always smiling and helps everybody out no matter how busy she is with her duties. And I can just say, as an admin team, you make that front office run extremely smooth. We never have to worry if we're off campus or if we're in observations. And so thank you for what you bring to the table to make Santen such a smooth, loving, caring, and welcoming area. And now I want to recognize our volunteer, Nikki Cowberg. Come on up, please. We absolutely love Nikki and what she brings to the table. She has helped with book fairs at Santen for many years. She was always one of the first to volunteer whenever we need help setting anything up, running the register, organizing, or taking down the book fair. Even with her busy professional schedule and family, she's willing to help us, and we are so grateful for all she has done. Thank you for all of your support over the years to make our systems, our library, run efficient, and always just having a smile when you're there supporting our kids and our staff. So thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight.
Thank you, Santen. We know that you've got a busy night, so feel free. If you do not want to stay, you can leave now if you'd like. I'll pull up our upcoming events. And as we conclude tonight's superintendent's report, the month of November is already here, and as you can see, we have several events this month. We have some holidays, we have some evening events. We also have our superintendent visit to Chaparral. We will see the Home of the Sharks on the November 19th if you're able to join us. But the month of November is already busy, and this is going to go super fast, so we've got lots coming up. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Next to start points of pride again in our celebrations. Yes. All right, with that, we'll go on to board comments.
President Reese.
Mrs. Wilson?
It was a busy 2 weeks. After writing everything down, I'm like, wow, was I home at all? Cooley had a haunted hallway that was fantastic. They had a great turnout from the community, not just even their kiddos, and I just want to give them a big shout out. Williamsfield with their trunk or treat was fantastic. I've seen so many families there that it was just amazing to see. I also went to both football games that had homecomings, and both prevailed, which was fantastic. And 20th anniversary for Higley High School celebration, because we're calling it the celebration. We also had a bonfire for Williamsfield and a dance team event. I don't know, Steve, I'm probably not so great with that one, whatever they called it, extravaganza, where we got to watch the dance team do their thing, and that was fantastic as well. So I just want to thank all those students, all those families who put in that extra time, all the teachers, because all those events every night is just a lot, and I appreciate all that time that they're putting into this. Thank you.
Any other board comments?
I also went to several of those events, but I wanted to say the Higley Band for the 20th celebration was so cool. Like just the entire travel thing, the travel performance that they did, I was just amazed by how cool and exciting that was. And the dancers at Williamsfield were amazing as well.
All right, any others? Okay. It has been a busy couple weeks. We're in the full swing of things, for sure. All right, we're going to go on to request to speak. We value input from our constituents. This time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember, this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and a decision at a later date. We ask that you please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And we have Debbie Barron. Barone?
Barcone.
Oh, Barcone, I apologize.
I had a statement written up, but I'm going to just do my recommendations instead. We had an altercation at Williamsfield High School, and I had some concerns, and as I talked to other parents, we kind of came up with some suggestions for policy changes, if possible. And one of them, my grandson, who I have legal guardianship of, was severely beaten at Williamsfield High School on September 23rd. And that's why I'm here today. I would like the board to look, review, and hopefully change some of the district policies which are not serving our students or the community that well. Number one, when a parent drops their child off at school, or he walks or rides a bus, it should be a reasonable expectation that their child will be safe and will not return home in a traumatized condition. Number two, 9 days out of school for a high school student is a death sentence. That's what suspension is when they are involved in something, even if they're not the perpetrator. If they're the ones who are the victim, their punishment is the same as a perpetrator. 9 days out of school for a high school student is a death sentence for their grades, and really just 9 days of not having a schedule. After COVID, I would think missing school that many days would have taught all of us a lesson that kids require consistency. I would submit to you that in-house suspension is a more reasonable approach. No participation in extracurricular activities, separate lunch from peers, except those also in suspension. No daily social interaction with general population, but required that they attend school on time, complete schoolwork every day. 9 days off is not a disciplinary measure. no cell phone access while at school, those 9, 3, or 1 day. Whatever the suspension period is, that's what I would recommend. And number 3, and most importantly, adequate school security, so any altercation doesn't last as long or severely as this one did. Security should be mandatory in all gathering places. Number 4, and just fair and just treatment needs to be executed to ready kids for the real world. Criminal and predatory behavior should not be tolerated ever. It sends a message, particularly to a predator, that he is on equal footing with anyone he wants to assault, that his behavior is acceptable and a victim is just as guilty as he is. That's the wrong message to send our kids. Also, I won't say that part because that's kind of a personal thing that the kid did. But anyway, I would like you to think about those suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And we will follow up with Dr. Foley for more information as well. Thank you. Do we have any other requests to speak? All right, we will go on to our consent agenda. I move that we approve our consent agenda as it is presented.
Second.
Questions or comments regarding our consent agenda?
President Reese?
Mrs. Kaler?
Sorry. I was just excited to read about 6.15 for our retention supplemental from our ESSER 3 monies. I think that's going to be a very welcomed addition to their paychecks. So thank you for all those that stuck with us, and I'm happy to vote yes on that for sure.
Thank you. And I also want to recognize the gifts and donations from Lowe's, Mr. Zucker, the Black Hawk Band Boosters for both the Washington D.C. trip and for professional development. I want to just make a quick note. On our agenda tonight, we have been asked to approve both the Higley High School and Williamsfield High School marching bands travel to Washington, D.C. to do the Memorial Day Parade there. They will be traveling as a Higley Unified School District band. So they will be participating in this parade collectively, not as two high schools. And from a district that only has two high schools, I think that is amazing. I love the fact that we can come together, we can represent our district, and be able to participate in something like this. And we're seeing definitely more and more of these types of events and participation happening where our two high schools are coming together and they are they're working together so we can help support each other. Our dance teams are traveling together, and so it's exciting from my standpoint to see that we're so close and we're only so big, but I am excited to see that trip is happening, so that we'll have a Higley Unified band out there. So, any other questions or comments on our consent agenda? No. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. All right, we're going to go on to our information items. Our ESSER 3. And Mr. Moore, that's you.
Good evening, President Reese, members of the board. I'm excited to present the work of the ESSER 3 committee on the spending plan that we've outlined here in this presentation. We will be presenting, excuse me, is the spending plan for the final round of federal relief money. This is the final federal relief money that we have recognized so far. We don't foresee any additional federal relief money coming from the government. I want to acknowledge the entire ESSER committee, as some are here in person to help assist in this presentation, but also to those who cannot attend but contributed to this presentation. So in no particular order, Ms. Felicia Malloy, the Federal Programs Assistant Director. Mr. David Lotzenheiser, Executive Director of Secondary Ed. Ms. Sue Borschitz, Interim Executive Director of Elementary Ed. Ms. Shauna Miller, the Director of Special Education. Mr. Dan Fox, the Principal of Sossaman Middle School. Ms. Katie Harris, the Principal at Gateway Elementary. Ms. June Blaine, the Teacher, Gateway Elementary. Ms. Janelle Taylor, the Parent at Gateway Elementary. Mr. Eric Rogers, Teacher, Chaparral Elementary. Our one student, Miss Aubrey De La Rivera, Williamsfield High School student. Isabel Castillo, Staff Accountant with Financial Services. Mr. Jim Pasek, the Director of Technology. Mr. Rich Dobson, Interim Director of Maintenance. And in addition, there have been several and numerous meetings of other employee groups, administrator groups that have contributed to this plan. So it's, this is not something that has been one idea. This has been a comprehensive plan that has included several individuals. Next slide, please. So what we have on the agenda is we're going to talk about what is this final round of ESSER. We're going to go over the requirements. We did issue a survey, and we'll talk about those results and how those contributed to this plan. We'll talk about our committee meetings and what those look like. And then we'll go over our ESSER plan. So there's 4 categories in our ESSER spending plan. Those 4 categories include learning loss, supporting and retaining employees, which Ms. Amy Kaler you alluded to earlier, school facility repairs, improvements, and additions, technology to support instructional delivery, innovation, and operations. And then we'll go over the next steps of the ESSER plan as it stretches all the way through 2024. So next slide, please. So what is ESSER? So we've talked about the first 2 ESSER packages that we received, and this is much similar with some additional restrictions and requirements. ESSER 3, this is the final relief package from the federal government. The ESSER funds may be used in response to the impact of COVID-19, and you will see later in this presentation that we have addressed that with this plan. The rescue plan, the American Rescue Plan, was approved on March 11, 2021, which authorized this 3rd round of funding. The timeline for spending, as I alluded to, covers 2021 through 2024, so an extensive timeline. As I mentioned, this funding source is intended to address the impact of COVID-19 on students, educators, and families. Some of the allowable uses include supporting the LEAs, which is the local education agency, which is us, ability to continue to provide educational resources, address student social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs, and supporting staff as a component of recruitment and retention efforts. Next slide, please. So to illustrate this federal funding source, we have added some pictures. In an effort to visually represent what this funding is, it is one-time funding from the federal government. This is not funding that we have arbitrarily on an annual basis. This is one time, and there's several restrictions and requirements tied to it, which we'll cover later. Next slide, please. So that funding is different than our annual school budget. Our annual school funds are provided on an ADM, average student daily membership basis, and those are intended to support our education and instruction of those students. So these are 2 different funding sources. So with that, I'll let Ms. Felicia talk about the ESSER 3 requirements.
Good evening, Felicia Malloy. I'm the Assistant Director for State and Federal Programs. And I would just like to point out that there are 4 requirements under our Esser plan that we have to write. One is that all activities, all expenditures of our money must be related to preventing, preparing for, and or responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. The second requirement is that minimally we must allocate 20% of the award for learning loss. However, as you will see later in the presentation, we are allocating more than the 20%. Our third requirement is that we must develop and make publicly available on our website our plan for the safe return to in-person instruction, as well as our continuity of our services. And the last requirement is that we will have meaningful consultation. And again, as you will hear in our presentation, you will see what that meaningful consultation involved. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Good evening, David Lotzenizer, Executive Director of Secondary. So one of the important things that we had to do was get stakeholder input. So we sent a survey out, and these are the results of the survey. So I'm going to take the next 5 slides and talk to you about what the survey results were and who took the survey. So as you take a look at the graph right there, you can see that we had about 82% were parents or guardians of the 2,784 responses. And so we had a great representation when you think about that in terms of a number. And we asked them multiple questions about different steps. You'll notice the second largest group was our certified employees, followed by our classified employees. But we felt this was a wonderful way that we could get input was from the survey that we sent out. Next slide, please. So basically what we asked them said, here's our 4 different categories. Would you rank order them for us? And so what you're seeing right there is the first priority. And so as our respondents answered the survey, this is what they put first, which is a great indicator of what was most important to them because that's where they ranked it most. And so you can see that learning loss is one of our categories, was the highest, followed by support and retain all of our employees, then technology, and then school facilities and repairs. Next slide, please. So within learning loss, we know that's such a broad definition. So we asked them more specific things. Would you rank these possible categories? Once again, this is the priority they showed by making it the very first when they rank ordered the different categories. And so you'll see that we have additional curriculum resources to enhance student learning, followed closely by the free summer school and tutoring. The other ones were very, very similar in size in terms of the response. We had 2 that definitely stood out. Next slide, please. And so when we asked the same thing about facility repairs, we had 3 different categories that we looked at. And we got to improve indoor air quality ventilation by upgrading the HVAC system was the top priority from the respondents. And then you'll see a lot more detail about what that entails further in this presentation. Next slide, please. Finally, when we talked about technology, we gave 3 different categories for them to rank order again, different possibilities that we had coming from the district. You'll see that additional student devices was the #1 priority, followed by connectivity and network enhancements. And the nice part about the survey was that it gave us an overview of what a community and what our parents were looking for, which then led to our conversations within our committee. Next slide, please.
Hi, my name is Aubrey De La Riva, and I'm a senior at Williamsfield High School. So our ESSER 3 committee consisted of 12 members in 6 different positions, 5 administrators, 2 principals, 2 teachers, 1 classified, 1 parent, and 1 student. We had 3 committee meetings. One on September 7th is where it was an introduction to the ESSER 3 committee, and we received surveys. And then the next meeting, we reviewed the surveys, and the 3rd meeting, we finalized our spending plan. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So as outlined earlier, so we had $7 million for this pot of money. So our spending plan, we maintained those 4 categories that we surveyed into our spending plan. So the final spending plan you'll see here. The majority of the allocation is to support our employees at $3 million. A lot of this money is coming with that consent agenda item that you approved earlier with a retention stipend to those employees returning. We'll also talk a little bit about that in the next 2 slides. The second category that was highest spent was the learning loss initiatives. This is well above the 20% that we were required to set aside at 2.3 million, excuse me. The third category was the school facilities repairs. That slice of pie is at 1.5 million. And finally, the technology to support instruction, we finalized that plan at 994,000. So in the next slides, we will go into detail on each of these slices of pie.
Good evening, Sue Borzik, Interim Executive Director of Elementary Ed Assessments and Student Information. I've asked Katie to come up and help present this first bullet. We're talking about free summer school and tutoring, and this is part of that learning loss initiative. We estimated the cost per year of this to be approximately $400,000. I'd like Katie to expand a little bit on the experience that we had this year with summer school and why we're recommending that we continue this experience for our students.
Good evening, thank you for having us. So I'm going to speak to the elementary model that Ms. Malloy spearheaded along with Ms. Day and several other committee members. There was an application process and then also an interview process and an increase of funds to pay for the teacher's time and planning. And with that increase in funding, I will tell you, we were able to get better quality teachers in regards to who was able to provide their time over the summer. So I can tell you my literacy coaches, my math specialist, even our assistant director of special education provided their time over the summer to give the intensive instruction that these students needed. So over my course of time here, I will tell you that it increased tremendously what the students got, and we were able to see a huge difference and a decrease in the gaps we thought that we would see from COVID. So that was amazing to see, and that we can continue with that. The middle school model and the high school model continued how they previously had, and I think they did a wonderful job maintaining that and seeing obviously the results that they were anticipating.
So as a result of that, and we've extended this recommendation over the next 3 years at an estimated cost of $400,000. We focus in the elementary at the bottom 25%. Are the students we initially invite to attend summer school. And so we'd like to continue to do that for the next 3 years. We know that based upon what we saw last year, this will help mitigate any learning loss that we might see. I'm also going to speak to the counselors. Shauna Miller had to step out this evening. But the second piece of the learning loss initiative was the recommendation of adding additional counselors. We know that during this time, students' their social and wellness capacities have needed some support. And so, we hear all the time that those things, that providing support for students' social emotional needs is one of the key things that we need to pay attention to. And so we've proposed that we add 3 counselors to service the elementary schools. Now we know we have 9 elementary schools and we would love to put 1 in each elementary school, but we didn't feel that that was sustainable. Remember, we have over the long term. So we'd like to recommend 3 counselors for the 9 elementary schools, meaning that 1 counselor will service about 3 schools. In addition to that, we'd also like to recommend the addition of 1 district lead counselor. And this district lead counselor would be able to support K-12 and provide a combined direction and mission and vision. And they will also be able to streamline support and utilize resources from the State School Counseling Association, as well as the National Association to develop support for students. And then finally, one of the key components that we identified a need for was curriculum to support learning loss in our elementary schools, specifically in our emergent readers. And in order to do that, we needed to entertain the idea of purchasing a systemic program, supplemental program that could help support phonics instruction in our K schools at grades K through 3. So we did some research into different programs and discovered and found that the 95% Phonics Core Classroom program was the one that met the needs of our district in the most comprehensive way. And This also met the needs of the MOUR, or the Move On with Reading requirement that the Arizona Department of Education requires in terms of making sure that students reach a mastery level of reading by the end of 3rd grade. The idea and the proposal includes the purchasing of this program with training for teachers over the summer and at the beginning of our new school year, and full implementation beginning in the fall.
Next slide.
Good evening, June Blaine, teacher, Gateway Point Elementary, and also serve as the Higley Education Association president. This was the second priority of the spending categories. It's to support and retain highly qualified employees. With this, we propose a one-time stipend of $1,500. This is for all classified, certified, and administrative employees. It is the $1,500 is for a full-time position. We will allocate or prorate the amount based off of their full-time equivalency, or FTE, as you see there. To qualify, you needed to be employed and working in the district as of April 1st of this year, so 2021, and must still be employed as of October 31st of this year. The proposed payout would be a live check on November 16th.
In addition to that, good evening, sub-technicians. So we have a category of what we call sub-employees. A lot of them work irregular and not very often. But when looking at value and letting them know that we appreciate the work that we did, we set some criteria in which they have to work at least 20 hours a week. And if that was the case and they worked regularly, they would qualify. So we've got about a half a dozen individuals that we call our sub-technicians that work for the HCPA, in which we're going to receive a partial payment for that.
And then the $50,000 we were proposing as well to help roll out this phonics program in regards to training the teachers and giving them the time they needed to understand that and fully implement it. The second part, as well as the counselor's PD with the new K-12 and the 3 at the elementary level, is to have the time and the PD there to make sure everybody's aligned in the same direction and providing what we need to our students and community. And then best practices, obviously just in general, what the vision that we would like to move forward with. So thank you.
As we look at the transportation incentive stipend, we're looking at it as a referral and recruitment bonus. So as you know, nationwide, we are not only short on frontline workers, but definitely in the transportation area. So through conversations with Josh Crosby, as well as what we've seen other districts do, not only in the state, but across the country, we think this is good utilization to kind of help our employees who are currently with us in terms of that $1,500, but then also incentivizing individuals to refer individuals, and hopefully they'll come on board and receive then a recruitment bonus as a result of that. So we would look at $500 of that going to the employee and $1,000 of that going to the employee referred and the employee who comes on board after 6 months of working with us. So they would have to stay on board with us for a minimum of 6 months to receive that dollar amount. They would get the full $1,000, and then the employee who made the referral would get $250 at the time of referral, and then another $250 after that 6 months that the employee sustained their position with us. We're modeling off of some other programs that we've seen recently within the area. Also, as you know, back in August, we came to the board to talk about our COVID leave and extending COVID leave. We initially had it sunset back in June, and with the Delta variant and other capacities and items that came aboard, we felt it was necessary to extend it. So looking at allocating a portion of the ESSER money to help support the leave that we had for employees during that time period.
Lastly, in this category, we have an allocation for operational support costs or indirect costs. These are costs for maintaining and operating the grant all the way through 23-24, fiscal year 23-24. Next slide, please.
Mr. Moore, could I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
I noticed that we're paying out these stipends soon. When are we hiring the counselor? Is it for this year, or is it going to be just for next school year only?
I think there's a little work to still be done on identifying a job description. We would look to, I think, broaden or create a new job description But it would be as soon as possible. The funding is allocated for this year, so we would look to, after tonight, probably start the work on building that process. So.
We've actually started looking at AD requirements, also looking at cert components to what we currently identify as our school guidance counselors. So there's dynamics of that cert. AD had created a social worker cert a couple of years ago too. So looking at maybe a combination of certifications that would be applicable, but really relying on what their experiences are to follow within this model versus just our guidance counselor model.
Good evening, Rich Dobbs, Interim Director for Maintenance and Facilities. In this portion of the ESSER plan, we were focusing on improving our air quality, trying to bring fresh air in and stale air out of the buildings. And we focused on the life expectancy of our old units when we should replace them, and the efficiencies of them. In that, we are going to district-wide $780,000. That is $280,000 for an upgraded EMS system. That is the brains of the HVAC system throughout the district. And then also buying 50 new air conditioning units to be taken out and divided into some of the much needed areas. Chaparral will be getting 10, Williamsfield 10, Centennial 5, HTA 10, Gateway 5, and Cortina 10 units each. Also at Higley High School, we will be replacing out one of the chillers and excuse me, and 2 air conditioning units in the weight room for $30,000 of that. Cortina will be getting 4 new AC units at $25,000 apiece. The media, the kitchen, and the girls' and boys' locker rooms will be getting new units there. Sossaman, we will be replacing out 2 chillers at $35,000 each for a total of $70,000. Gateway will be getting a new compressor in their media area for $25,000. Centennial, we will be replacing 2 units on their gym for $50,000. Power Ranch, we will be replacing a unit on the gym for $27,000. Coronado, we are going to replace the refrigeration unit on the walk-in cooler and the freezer unit for $30,000. Williamsfield, we will be replacing 3 units on their gymnasium for $45,000. HTA, we're going to also do new coolers on their walk-in cooler and freezer for $35,000. Santan, we will be replacing the walk-in cooler and freezer unit there for $30,000. And the district office will get 2 new units and 2 new air conditioning units for $20,000 there.
Can I ask a quick question while we're right here? Mr. Moore, why are we spending this kind of money at Sossaman? It's a newer school. They're in our lease. There's supposed to be funds for large expenses. This is not, we want a new something. These are mechanical. Why would we need to spend this kind of money at one of these schools that are newer?
Correct. Yeah. So we've identified the need with Mr. Rich Dobson and his team, and we've allocated into this ESSER plan until we finish litigation and finishing kind of conversations with JMF Higley in terms of utilizing those capital repairs fees that are built into those leases for those schools. We were going to budget for it here. He does have an additional list and additional HVAC units across the district where we can move that money from. But right now, we currently are having difficulty accessing those monies from the leases, so we are budgeting it in this plan initially.
Would these not be under warranty? I mean, are not most air conditioners like at least a 10-year warranty?
I mean, we would have to do some research and come back to you with that.
Because these, like I said, these schools are what? 7 years old? 8 years old? So, I mean, I think it's great that we have it kind of set aside that if we need it, but I want to make sure that we're kind of covering all of our bases, that most air conditioners have a longer warranty than that, that these are newer. I know, like you said, we have the litigation on spending those funds, but I find that kind of money spent on one of our newer schools, I find that kind of concerning for that reason.
President Reese, members of the board, one of the things, and we can provide additional backup information, but one of the things, as you heard or mentioned earlier, there's restrictions in ways you can use the funds. So yes, you can use them for basically, you can't just use them for any capital project. These would be improvement in these areas. One of the things that we had done earlier is a condition index on where our triaging our greatest needs in these, and trying to, you can use these funds out of Esser for this purpose, freeing them up out of other capital funds, so that would allow you to use those for other projects. So again, the plan was to utilize where they had identified need and priority with the funding sources that are allowing to do that. It also allows us to keep up with the maintenance and the condition of these that provide the quality of air filtration and cooling that we were finding problematic, and became a real priority when we talk about healthy environments and how important that is. So this was one of the allowable categories, and we happen to have information on exactly where is the state of the health and wellness of those systems, one for maintenance, but two for improvements.
President Reese, Dr. Foley, how long is it going to take to get these units? I've heard there's a shortage of air conditioning units, a whole problem, maybe we'll say, with a supply chain. So I didn't know, is this a plan to put in this summer, or are we trying to get it sooner? Wherever you'd like to direct the question, feel free.
Rich will happily answer this question.
Very good question. And right now, AC units are running anywhere from 9 to 15 weeks. So if we would like to get these done before summer, we would probably need to get these ordered in the very near future.
Thank you.
That very good question. And that's just not on AC units, that's on everything.
Sorry, so Dr. Foley, are we already looking at our summer projects so we can order materials? Sorry, I know that's a question that's not maybe in this, but maybe something that to think about.
President Reese, Vice President Wilson, obviously one of the things that's a big priority is that the priority of what needs to get done and when we get it done and what funding you use to it. Some of those things, obviously, with these one-time funding, you have the ability to project ahead. The others, we build the budget, but we've identified the needs and then we've prioritized the funding. Obviously, as we figure out what does or doesn't pass, or what allocations we have or don't have as we revise the budget, we then appropriately identify what we'll fund this year, the next year, the following year, based upon our priority list we've identified. So I can share with you that Rich and his team have done a very good job of being very comprehensive to figure out what needs to be done so we can be able to prioritize when and how we fund that and triage it. We've talked an awful lot about that, our district process for identifying a hierarchy of needs to help us determine when you have so much to do and only so much funding, what do you do first? And that's one of the things that they've done a great job at helping us to get our handle on and wrap our head around. It's unusual to have one-time funding for this purpose, and it's one of those things, these are long-term investments that help us on the long-term maintenance and care of our equipment that may have been in great need of such for a long time.
Thank you.
President Reese, I have a question. So if there's up to a 15-week delay, or how critical are these
upgrades? You know, so if it takes longer or whatever, I mean, is it going to be devastating? It's not, I mean, an upgrade versus a repair or replacement.
It's nothing that's devastating right now. That's why it's critical that we do, and when we do get this approved, and we know that the money is coming available, we need to get things ordered as quickly as we can. We're probably lucky that it's the cooling or the cooler time of the year now. We would want to make sure that we try to get as much done as we can before the warm season comes. And we all know that Arizona gets a little warm.
President Reese, members of the board, it's important to remember that the state monitors how we're utilizing this. So in other words, they have the rules associated with it. You say, this is how we're going to do this. You turn it in to the grant, to the compliance. They make sure you're spending it appropriately. Then you can fund it. Obviously, we then bring things to you, like per our policy, based on the cost, you will be approving them as purchased, just like you did tonight with the stipend. So again, you will approve part and piece. We also have to work with the state to make sure that our plan is spent according to and in alignment with what is allowable by those rules as part of the compliance of that. And hence one of the pieces why you do a lot of work on the front end. I cannot tell you the amount of hours. Yes, there were 3 committee meetings, but your staff behind the scene were working hours and hours and hours to gather the information and documentation to help prioritize what can and cannot be used with that funding that's allocated.
Another question. Obviously, if this is, money's given, are we tied to a certain and one and only distributor when it comes to air conditioning units? Are we looking at a lot of different companies that can provide these air conditioners, or are we just looking at one specific?
No, we are not just tied to one. We will be looking at 3 or 4 different manufacturers.
I just got an air conditioner in less than a week, so I know that they can be done. It's just going out there and finding it. So if anything were to break down, I think we need to make sure we're looking at all avenues.
Yes, ma'am.
And it came from Kentucky, so that was pretty fast.
A lot of these were maybe a residential, maybe a 5-ton unit and stuff like that. A lot of these we're looking at 7.5 ton, 10, 15, even up to 35-ton units. So they're not just something that is just setting around. So, but I do know that if we do the job right, we look around, we will be able to get the best price and in the least amount of time.
President Reese and Member Kaler, yeah, we'll still utilize our procurement. We have several cooperative contracts, several school district-oriented vendors that will bid on a lot of these projects, and there's multiple resources to procure a lot of these items that are in this plan. We go to the next slide. We'll introduce Mr. Pasek.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jim Pasek, Director of IT. So my part of the plan, or our part of the plan, is technology to support instructional delivery, innovation, and operations. And we're going to focus on spending the dollars that we have over the course of the first 2 years rather than 3. In year 1, we're planning to purchase 950 spare student laptops. This will allow us to distribute spares to all of our schools so that if a student has a broken laptop, we can take their broken laptop away from them, give them a new functioning laptop, and get them back to work. We can then take the broken laptop and turn it in for warranty repair and send it away and get it back. As you might expect, that's taking a little bit of time because everything takes a little more time now, but we will be able to assign approximately 100 spares to each high school, 50 spares to each middle school, and 25 spares to each elementary school with that purchase. The second line is CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity software that we pay for here in Higley. Protects us from ransomware and variety of threats. What we want to do, the cost there, the $3,373, allows us to put a small piece of software on each of those spare laptops so that they are secure and that CrowdStrike can monitor anything that might be happening from a cyber threat point of view. Should that threat progress upward into our more critical systems, CrowdStrike can stop that and offer us remediation. But we definitely want to protect our edge devices, and so that's the money we're investing there. The third line is a price difference. We were just notified last week that Higley Public Schools was granted approximately $500,000 by the ECF, which is the Emergency Connectivity Fund. It was a $7.1 billion federal program given to the schools with the intent and purpose of providing devices that will go home with students that do not have adequate technology at home. So last year, Higley Public Schools was able to gather data from our community and identify a number of students, in this case 1,357 students, that said that they didn't have a device, that they had an inadequate device, or that they had to share a device. And so the USAC, the same organization that gives us our E-rate funding, awarded us, once again, approximately $500,000 to buy these devices, but the price was capped by the federal government per device at $400 per device. And, say it with me, everything's more expensive now. So the $115,000 will make up the difference in that purchase and allow us to purchase those devices to send home with our students. We're expected to provide those devices as part of the grant to students for 3 years. So they can be rearranged, but they need to be in the hands of students for 3 years. And I hope to move forward with that because I think that'll be a great thing for our students. If you look at this year, FY22 and FY23, you'll see a line for Adobe Creative Cloud. Adobe Creative Cloud is a software package, approximately 20 pieces of software, some of which are cloud-based, some of which can be downloaded and installed on computers. Things like Adobe Spark allows students to create projects, multimedia presentations, just to kind of let their creativity run wild. It also includes things like Photoshop, Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Premiere, a variety of software that the students can either use on their school device, or if they have a more powerful computer at home, they can download, say, Photoshop and install that at home. So we want to start in year one this year with enough licenses to work with our teachers, build capacity with them, and then if that goes well, and I think it will, then in year two we'll purchase enough licenses so that we can distribute it to all teachers, all employees, and all students to use those projects. So that's the top line in the second. Wrapping up the first year, we would like to purchase document cameras for all of our teachers. These will be new plug-and-play USB document cameras that will be consistent throughout the district. Everyone will have the same model. We'll install the software. We will train them on its use. I'm going to work with Dr. Treat and the academic coaches to develop a plan to train all the teachers on how to use their cameras. Shouldn't be too complicated, but we want to make sure that they start all on the right foot.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Was there a need established for these document cameras? There's a yes,
Yeah.
okay, because I've walked into rooms, they've been in shelves, like new classrooms. I've been given one, I put that one up on the shelf. I don't know a lot of teachers that actually use them. So I've seen every teacher, I didn't know if it's really that common.
Yeah, oh,
I
sorry.
was just going to come up, and I can speak for Gateway. We have teachers that use them every day, and Mrs. Blaine will tell you when it breaks, it disrupts her entire instruction, and it's very hard to get new ones in. So I personally have used tax credit to have some on hand, and it takes upwards of usually 2 to 3 months to get them. So they are used all the time. I mean, every minute of the day. I think you can probably back me up on that. So it is a key component to the effectiveness of their instruction.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I just have a quick question since we
Yes, ma'am.
kind of took a little break. We see that we're going to buy all these cameras. That's fantastic. How are we going to refresh them in 3 years or 5 years when the money's not here? We don't have ESSER funds anymore. Is there a plan, Dr. Foley, or maybe? I'm concerned about, like, you know, our teachers get used to this technology.
Yeah.
They love it. And then, oh, mine's crap and it's broken and whatever. How are we going to refresh that?
Yeah, well, we're going to, just like everything, right? We have a lot of one-to-one devices, teacher laptops, all manner of technology that needs to be refreshed on a 5-year cycle. If we look at a plan that Robert Schroep created last year, he created an excellent plan. It has basically 20% of the district every year being refreshed. So we're going to have to take the money that we have and be strategic, be creative about refreshing these things. I don't have I wish we had, you know, I think we all wish we had all the money. But the good news is I have every expectation that the camera will last the 5-year cycle, so we'll be able to start off on a good foot right now, and then 5 years from now we can think about it ongoing.
I would encourage us to think about it before 5 years. As we've seen the copier incident a few years ago, we bought all copiers and they started breaking, and then it was like limping them along, and I've become a master copier at some points of my life, and I've read all the manuals, so just to be able to fix it myself. So I think it would be an encouragement to think about it well before that 5-year time frame comes up, how we're going to get that money, and if we're going to allocate it again and all of them refreshed all at once again, or if we stage it in like we've done some other devices.
Right.
Just a recommendation.
President Reese, Member Wilson, we've updated or enhanced our capital planning process. As you noted earlier in November, we've come to you with a comprehensive capital plan on what we are going to spend it on. We would look to build this into IT's annual capital plan, much like we'll look to build those counselor salaries into the annual budget. This would be something we would look to sustain. This plan does not, the intention of this and the intention of the committee was not to put a bunch of money into this and not be able to sustain it. We were very systemic about making sure this is something we can sustain long-term, so.
Members of the board,
Thank you.
one of the things I'd like to share with you is that there's sort of been a transformation happening in instruction in Higley. I think I want you to realize, while it's taking a while for all of you've been approving one-to-one devices for all of our elementary schools, and sometimes you've approved things and several months later they come in. But I will tell you, we were at Cortina the other day, and then we were walking through classes, and a teacher came and said, I am so happy about having these laptops available in my classroom all the time. It changes the way I do instruction. So when you hear about one-to-one instruction, K-12, and the fact that all of our schools are working toward having devices, how we're using our curriculum and how we're using our teachers and how teaching and tools and how we're using our cameras and other things looks different than it did for Higley a long time ago, because if you didn't have all of the, we would buy curriculum and not have the one-to-one component for it. Think about our ELA adoption at the secondary level collections. Now our teachers are finally getting to use it the way it was meant to be driven, with everyone having their own devices. When you listen to his plan, when he's talking about I will tell you, Jim wasn't even working in the district a couple hours, and he was already on top of this grant that came out for ECF. So, I mean, our secondary students take their devices home. Our elementary students, the devices are in the classroom. But we now would have a way for those families who don't have access to a device at home. We could provide, if you aren't a middle school or high school student that has a one-to-one device to you, we would, if you don't have a device at home, we have the ability now to make sure when you go home as an elementary student, you have access to a device at school to do your homework, to access your curriculum, to connect into Canvas, to do the tools that we've added into our repertoire, I guess, as we have lived through pandemic and are emerging better because of. So I think it's important that we've moved very quickly, very fast, and looking at how we do this looks different than we've done before, but it's pretty exciting when we're talking about being one-to-one throughout our whole system, looking at our curriculum and our learning management systems and our tools as a part of how we do instruction in Higley better. Obviously, and I think you've been reading a little bit about this as well, that involves professional development. How are we using that? And that is something you heard him even say in working with Dr. Treat and working with the instructional coaches. This is an ongoing piece that we're going to continue to evolve. We have these one-time resources that allow us to kind of get an umph in this area and in this category where we can use, and hence this is the plan the committee used based upon the needs and the voices of what they're hearing to say, here's how we could use this best now. So year 2.
Yes, so thank you. I've already addressed the first line, which is the Creative Cloud, which would be for everyone, teachers, employees, and students. But the second line there, wireless display modules for elementary classrooms, what I would really like to encourage, and I think teachers will appreciate, is this idea of becoming untethered from their desk. And so at our secondary schools, we have, all of our teachers have laptops, but at our secondary schools, they have a wireless module that allows them to connect their laptop to their display screen or their projector, whatever the equipment happens to be, wirelessly. So they can walk around the classroom, they can work with a group, they can work from anywhere. We do not have those modules at the elementary schools. We would like to install them. We would like to take advantage of this one-time funding to put those in so that our elementary teachers can enjoy the same sort of flexibility in their classroom that our secondary teachers enjoy. And once again, the document camera is also something that does not have to be plugged into the wall. It just plugs into the laptop, so that can also move around the room flexibly. So that's everything. Thank you.
Next slide, please.
Good evening, Dan Fox, Principal, Sossman Middle School. The committee has put in a lot of time on this, but as Dr. Foley mentioned, as Mr. Moore has mentioned, even as Aubrey De La Riva has mentioned here, there's been a lot behind the scenes to put this together, and we feel this is a very comprehensive plan. We feel this is a very solid plan in utilizing these funds. Obviously, with any plan, especially as educators, there needs to be some sort of progress monitoring. So in the future, the plan moving forward is to still have meetings to provide some oversight as to the use of these funds here, review the expenditures and make sure that they still align to the original spending plan, the original vision, the original piece that this committee has put together. Any adjustments, any recommendations that we do receive, we can propose those items to the spending plan if we see a need for those items. And as we stated before, one of the requirements for this ESSER funding is that the LEA, so Higley would have to post this on our website. In addition, we would have to post any changes on our website to represent those changes and recommendations or adjustments that we do make. So the plan after tonight moving forward is to continue to review the progress of all these items. And as you guys know, there's a lot of future planning that has to go into everything that we spend for. So we feel this is a very comprehensive plan. It'll meet the needs that our community members told us that were the most important to us, and we feel that all these pieces will hit on everything that we are looking for.
With that, if there's any questions, I know you've already had an opportunity to ask them, but if there's any more questions.
I have one more, Mr. Tyler. It goes back to technology. I'm sorry. Over the years, I've heard of, but basically, it's always been the Higley High problem of connectivity in certain buildings. Is that still an ongoing issue, or have we really kind of taken care of that, or is it still one of those issues? It's just the way the school was created, the brick walls. I've heard lots of different things, but there's some areas where it's like, is it what? Couple? I know Higley was a big one. I don't know if there was, I don't know. Is there anything we can do to help?
Well, we will absolutely follow up and on concerns that Higley High might have with regard to their wireless. If they need additional radios or we need to run some additional drops, we can look into doing that for them. I will take the opportunity to say that it is on our plan for this year to upgrade the wireless at both middle schools. That was something that was a project that was delayed by the pandemic and other circumstances, but we have, it's been approved, and we are, if we haven't, and I think we have already ordered the equipment. We have ordered it. So as soon as the equipment comes in, we will be improving the wireless connectivity in the network at both of our middle schools, and that has been an area of concern. So we'll loop back with Higley High School and see if there's dead spots or areas there, but we're definitely working on the middle schools.
I think it would be good just to reach out to all principals and see if there's any other, because I think sometimes if we don't ask, they won't tell us. But just making sure that everywhere is really, sorry, Mrs. Harris, do you want to say something?
I was just going to say, we had an issue 2 years ago, and the entire team came out and fixed it. It did take some time because the problem was unknown. They were walking around with their computers. They even had someone from an outside vendor come in, and we have not had any issues. I asked June that as well because it was primarily in her building, and knock on wood, there has been nothing with our one-to-one as well. So we appreciate their support and their urgency in fixing that.
Yeah, I just think it would be good to reach out and make sure that everybody, sometimes just asking and saying, hey, is your Wi-Fi, is it Wi-Fi that we're dealing with? Okay. I'm like, at some sort of connectivity, is it okay on your campus? And if not, where are we struggling so we can get that addressed?
President Reese, Vice President Wilson, that is one of the things. We have a process for how, when you have issues or concerns, you report them so that we address. I know that for a while that there were some issues, but a majority of those have been addressed. And so if there are specific spots that are happening on campus and administration isn't aware, we just need to help remind them of that process that we have for how you reach out for support. One of the things, and again, you've approved these on, you've been reading about them actually in consent, or you've been putting them in your status and approved them in consent or as action items, are some of the upgrades that were allocated through the technology budget as part of our capital. There were areas identified as problematic. Most of them, though, were not at school sites. They were at other locations like district office or other facilities. But obviously, the more we evolve with wireless and connectivity, which is one of the biggest pieces that we realized is we need it all over, and that has been something that we've been working on.
I will also add, like the connectivity was a factor in the survey results. There was a lot of questions and input provided on lack of connectivity, and even our student has commented on that. But what Mr. Pizik forgot to mention is we are up for our 5-year WAN and LAN refresh. So every 5 years we are required to upgrade or go out to bid for our internet and our wireless and local area network. So that will make a huge improvement. 5 years of not upgrading or staying static. Anybody in technology can realize that is going to put us light years behind. So this upgrade, which is why you don't see that in the technology plan, we feel, and Mr. Pizik can allude to it, will make a massive jump in terms of some of the areas where we've been lacking in that field.
Yes, we're working with the finance department to go out for RFP for the WAN and the internet connectivity. So we look forward to getting responses back and making the best selection for Higley Public Schools.
Thank you. I just know we've had in the past where AZ Merit comes along and everything's checked and everything's working great, and then as soon as you get all the bodies in the room and all the devices going, then everything quits, and then they're locked out, and then it's stressful, and it's AZ Merit and all of that. So I just would love to make sure that those things don't happen in our future, and I know COVID, I get it, but I just always think of that moment in time that we could prevent.
And Mrs. Kaler, that's a good point. We would hear from teachers in the past, like you mentioned, our English language arts curriculum, they had devices in their classrooms and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to use them because half of the kids can't get connected and things like that. So while I'm excited about going to these one-to-ones, having more devices in the classroom, it was a little concerning for me when we can't, in the past, we haven't been able to support that many devices all connecting at one time. So you have teachers who are, all these teachers are having these kids connected and things like that, that it slows it down or people can't get connected or they're getting kicked off. And Mrs. Harris, thanks for the update, because I know Gateway was always, it's like I was there and then I got kicked off. And so thanks for the update. I'm glad it's working now. I'm glad they found out why, because I know we spent a lot of time there. So, yeah, that was the first thing that popped into my head too, Mrs. Kaler, was this is great. What about our connectivity? Now, I haven't heard anything for a while, so obviously you guys have been working on it and upgrading it and making it better. And I'm glad to hear that we're, like you said, 5 years, you're way behind in the technology piece. So we might as well be on dial-up at that point if we're that old, you know. So I don't even know what that is. I know, they're like, what's dial-up? So thank you for addressing that and just keeping that in the back of your head as well with all these additional devices.
President Reese, Board Member Kaler, actually until we were one-to-one, when it came time for assessment, they were moving carts and computers from one school to the next. So if you had a set during testing time, your instruction changed because we were moving devices around on a testing schedule because there weren't enough devices. That should never ever be the problem here in Higley again. So, thank you.
Quick question, just, you said 5 years, do we have to wait 5 years? Is that?
By statute, that we can only go the length of 5 years, and typically to get the best pricing, 5 years is utilized. We will probably recommend like an option to renew every year in this current bid. So that gives us the flexibility to, if there is no enhancements or if we feel comfortable with where we are, we can just renew, or if we feel like we need to address it. If there is issues to address, we can then cancel, then go out for another bid.
It just seems like such a long time, like we've all said, and so if we're spending all this money on technology and it can't be used, then.
Mrs. Kaler, back to AZ Merit talk. I believe the state was also having issues with their servers back then. And I remember both. There was a problem on our end and there was a problem at the state level too. So that we can't control, but if we can always make sure that our end is good, that would be great. But yeah, I remember the state having issues with kiddos too, when my kiddos were taking it, and still are.
So Vice President Wilson, I'm happy to report last year, Robert Schroep can probably verify this. The last time we went through testing, we didn't have technology issues, and they were ready. They were on deck and ready to go. So I think we're in a better place. Now I want to knock on wood when I say something, but I think we're in a much better place. So.
And I just want to give a shout out to our community or our committee. Thank you. I know it's extra time in your day and you guys are already doing your own work, and then it's taking extra time in your day to participate in this, but it's really appreciated, and that way it's going, not just meeting the requirement of the funding, but you guys are the accountability piece as well. So I just want to thank you guys for putting your time and effort in and making sure that we're meeting our needs from what our survey said, as well as the needs that you guys are familiar with. So thank you for your time. Anything else? All right. Well, we'll go on. Who's going to cover this one?
President Reese, members of the board, this is one of those quarterly updates that we do for special education. She does, that kind of explains it there if you have any questions. She needed to leave this evening, and if there are any questions, we'll be happy to, if we can't answer in the description there, but this is one of those opportunities we hope we provide for you as an update of where we're at. At our last meeting, you had an opportunity to hear a little update about the program and her funding and how she does this, and this is just a quarterly update.
And we talked about the day school as well a little bit during that time and everything. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Perfect. Then we will go on to 7.3, which is our certified evaluation update. And Ms. Martins, I believe this one's yours.
Yes. Good evening again, President Reese, Vice President Wilson, members of the board, our Higley colleagues, as well as our community. We're going to take an opportunity tonight to next go over the evaluation tool that we use for certified employees. Before I get started, I have my fellow colleagues who have been instrumental in making sure this happens and collectively putting this together to lead this project along, and they'll be participating in the presentation. We have Miss Melissa Garland, who is our assistant principal at Higley Traditional Academy. We also have Miss Rachel Broadley, who's principal at Centennial Elementary, and also Miss Karen Bacon, who's principal at Higley Traditional Academy also. Next slide, please. So as we get started, I just wanted to provide some background information. I started with the district in fall of 2017. It's interesting now because it's almost been 5 years. It's a long time. But prior to my arrival, I had heard a lot about the Higley evaluation tool and how there were concerns about the tool. Right after I got here, I had met with a number of individuals, Ms. Sherry Richards, one of them, who was serving as Executive Director of Elementary at the time, about our evaluation tool and how it had been ineffective. In terms of the process of going through the strategic plan, these groups and organizations that were put together as strategic stakeholders to provide comments and feedback also talked about our evaluation tool and how that it did not provide specific and meaningful feedback to teachers. So it was a struggle for teachers as well as for administrators who were issuing and doing the evaluation. Addition to that, I heard a lot of feedback on our Meet and Confer team too about how the scores in the evaluative factors didn't add up. So there was a lot of confusion and a lot of unhappiness or dissatisfaction with the tool. So I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Bacon to continue that conversation.
Good evening. So in the spring of 2018, a small group of administrators went over to a neighboring district to take a look at their evaluation tool, which is a hybrid version of the Danielson model. We began work to investigate the options that Higley had available, and those tools were evaluated based on the alignment with our strategic plan and our priorities. The work was kind of slow, so our Director of Human Resources, Mom Martin, solicited the help of some administrators to co-chair. There's your team right here. So we co-chaired a larger group of people to get some input from the stakeholders that were both using the tool as an evaluator and being evaluated by it. So at first, the committee was established in the year 2018-19, and it was quite large, and we found difficulty finding a time that all of us could meet because everybody had other commitments. We were all in breakout groups developing different parts of the strategic plan. So we decided to pare that group down to a smaller core group. And so those stakeholders moved forward with the process, and the committee was prepared last spring to make a recommendation, and then we all know what happens. So we had to focus on those other priorities and take a little break from that, but we would like to recognize the larger team that participated in the process. Next slide. So that's the big group, and then it was pared down to a group of about 8. But we would like to thank each member of the community that willingly gave their time and contributed to the discussions in the process. Various stakeholders were determined across the district based on roles and recommendations. And then not all of these individuals listed on this slide are still with the district because this was several years ago.
All right, good evening. So one of our initial meetings was to determine what our goal was for creating or coming up with or planning or just all the things for a new evaluation instrument. We had a few goals that we really wanted to stick to. It needed to be a really good instrument, and good is it's a very ambiguous word, but we'll get into what that meant later on. Ideally, we wanted to still utilize the Frontline platform, which is also known as My Learning Plan, which we're all familiar with. It's a great tool, and as the years have progressed, we use it for more and more things, such as attendance through ASOP, and again, through documenting all of our professional learning opportunities. We also wanted to make sure that it was something that was relatively easy, not only for the individual who was being evaluated, but also for the individuals who were using the evaluation instrument. One of the things that we liked about the particular model that we're going to present to you guys tonight is that it has the ability to run different data reports for an administrator. So just like we expect any of our employees who are working with other groups to run data, like student data or maybe data on different maintenance costs or things like that, we want to be able to run our own data reports to determine if there are trends in teaching practices that we need to address as a building administrator. So there's other options for these reports that we found to be really nice, and it would be a great add-on if we could use them. So those were our 3, look-fors when determining which evaluation instrument to go with. Next slide, please. Ultimately, as you guys know, we currently have the strong instrument for evaluation. We looked at a variety of other instruments that correlated with Frontline, because again, that was one of our goals. We ultimately decided we want to stick with the Frontline platform, and we had to work with Frontline to determine which additional evaluation instruments were used. There was a handful of them. While not all of them were ideal for our situation that we have in Higley. Some of them were very exclusive to the state that they were originally created for. There was one in particular that was exclusive to New York, the state of New York. There was another one that at the time was very exclusive to higher education. So again, it wouldn't have been applicable to us. Another thing that we were really looking for is something that is true, tried and true, something that has a really great reputation, which is ultimately why we decided on the Danielson model. So I will pass this on to Melissa to continue the rest.
Good evening, President Reese and Governing Board. So you've heard a little bit about the background and how we ended up comparing the 2 models that we continued with on the process. So I will take a few minutes to fill you in on our work for the committee. So as we began looking at what we wanted from an evaluation instrument and the concerns that were brought to the table, we started comparing the 2 models. The strong instrument as well as the Danielson model, they do look at the same components of instruction in a classroom. They both have classroom management or classroom environment. They will look at planning, preparation, professionalism. All of those things are similar. However, what we found is that in comparing the 2, we found that the Danielson model allowed us to give specific feedback. An example of that is in the strong instrument, there are 7 standards. But within those 7 standards, there's not specific things that you can give feedback on. Because for those of us who have been here for a long time and received training from that organization on the instrument itself, we were told it's not a checklist. So you just have guidelines to go from, which is good in some ways, but when teachers are wanting to improve their practice, they want to know specifically what it is they can do. So with the Danielson model, it allows us to do that. So an example is within classroom environment, there are 5 different components of that. And with that, you can have specific indicators. So while a teacher can be exemplary in one area of classroom management, there may be another area that they can improve upon. But with that instrument, you can tell them exactly what it is and how they can go about making that change in the classroom. Another thing that we did along the way as we compared those, the Danielson Instrument does have very comprehensive evaluation instruments for our other certified groups, like school psychologist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, and also like our coaches that we have. So when the administrators that were in the group, and as well as Shauna Miller, who took part in that, we really found that to be much better suited to what we wanted for our employees rather than what we were using currently. One of the last things we did in the process before we made our decision, I know Ms. Broadley spoke to wanting to stay with Frontline. And one of the things that we know, being in education, things change and there's always something better. Well, we've really grown attached to Frontline and it's easy to use, and now that it is used for more than just evaluations, we wanted to stay with that because anytime there is the potential for a change, it's important to let people know what also is going to be the same, and that would be something that would be familiar to everyone. So we had a representative from Frontline meet with us for a webinar where we were able to go through that instrument as looking through the eyes of a teacher and an administrator. There are many components to the Danielson Instrument that we have the ability to use or not use. There's self-evaluation components. There's also where a teacher can create their own professional development plan as well. So we do have the ability to use those or not. Next slide, please. So throughout the process, these were our 4 considerations. We made sure that along the way we had input from all committee members. We also had buy-in. We also had to consider the cost to the district, which Ms. Martins was very instrumental in helping us understand what the cost is for the district to use Frontline, and also doing research with the Danielson model in terms of how much it would cost to train our administrative staff and also training our teachers on the new evaluation instrument, should we go that way. And we also considered a timeline for implementation. Although our committee has been working on this for quite some time, we still felt it was important to see the process through, be true to it, and not rush just because it had taken us longer than we had anticipated due to other circumstances out of our control. So with all of those considerations, we came up with our conclusions. Next slide, please. So as a committee, we decided that the Danielson Instrument was the best option for HUSD for the reasons that you see listed. It is a very, it's a nationally recognized, it's a validated instrument that's used around the country. It has evaluations for all certified groups, and the feedback that it can provide teachers, which really is what this process is about, was going to be more of what we thought our teachers would desire and what they needed to be the best they can be in the classroom. And also just being able to continue with our online platform, that made it a good choice as well. And now, Ms. Martins will speak about next steps.
So from the inception of this committee and its work in identifying what we were going to do, we knew that once we got to a point that we had to communicate out, we needed to come back and communicate to the board the work that we've been doing. And as my fellow colleagues mentioned, you know, we had to refresh ourselves, as our initial recommendation was to implement last school year. And as we said, the delays of COVID and everything, and we didn't want to we didn't want to add additional pressure to our employees with the coming back to school remotely and then doing a change on top of that, as well as all the other dynamics that were happening at the time. So we're here to communicate this information to you. We then want to make sure to communicate to all of our certified as well as our administrative groups to let them know the work of the committee, what they've done, and where we're going to go. And then we're going to have to start training this spring of 2022. We're going to have to start training all of our qualified evaluators, which are primarily our administrators and some select other groups of individuals. So that way we know the tool, we know it well, we know how to utilize it for the fall implementation of 22-23, and we'll make sure to also communicate it out to all of our certified employees in which this directly impacts them. And you may or may not be aware, every year before the start of the school year, we always do employee meetings, and at those employee meetings, we always do an overview of our training tool, of our evaluation tool, and train all of our employees on it and the core concepts of it. So we'll do that for them, but instead of the strong, it will be the Danielson tool, and move on from there. One of the things that you might wonder and question is that it is a certification tool for our certified employees, and they don't have something specific to administrators. But as we've talked about in cabinet as well as the leadership team, we know that at our retreat we talked about core values. We know with our strategic plan we've aligned other dynamics of our goals and our vision. We firmly believe that as we look at that as a whole from cabinet below, we should be utilizing that for our administrators, and we can certainly incorporate components of that and tie into the domains that are listed that Ms. Garland mentioned earlier in relation to the Danielson model. But then that way, as I've always said in the past, our strategic plans really paves the pathway, for everything that we do within the district. Next slide, please. We will entertain any questions that you might have.
Dr. Foley, I know you're a part of the superintendent's group from the Valley. Do any other districts that you know of use this that are local, so then it's an easier transition if we were to get an employee that they're already kind of knowing?
Yes. So President Reese, Vice President Wilson, members of the board, the Danielson tool is one that is utilized by many school districts. The Mesa Public Schools District utilizes it, and so does Gilbert. I will share with you, I've had the experience of being trained in how to use both tools. When I was here in Higley, we were using the Strong, and then when I transitioned to Mesa Public Schools, went through the extensive training in the Danielson. When I look at it from my own lens of which tool would I prefer to use in my toolbox, I would use the Danielson over and over and over again before I'd ever want to go back to utilizing the Strong if I had a choice. So when I came to Higley, and my very first year here, Mom was updating us of the work that was doing. The plan was to move this along. I was like, woohoo, this is great because this is a fabulous tool. I was very familiar with this tool. Then obviously that became not the priority. And one of the most important parts, and you heard the committee talk about it, is the training, the integrated reliability, the understanding of how to use the tool. This is a more meaningful, useful tool that gives me, I think, more comprehensive feedback. But the training is the most important part. Rolling out a new instrument online would have been a horrible idea. No matter how good the training is, that was not the time to do it. So as we return to more normal, this was time to resurrect this and to continue with the work here. And when we're visiting the work, it is still the more preferred utilization tool. It is truly more used, more recognized. If we were to go to a national conference and say we're using the Strong model, they go, what's that? If you were to say you're using the Danielson, they go, oh, that's a wonderful tool.
Ms. Richards actually brought up in one of our meetings as a reminder to us, a few years back, the ADE, Arizona Department of Ed, started doing qualified, I was like, what's the word? Qualified evaluator training. And there are districts all over the state that participated, as well as charter schools. And the 2 times that Higley's been represented, and I think we've had a 3rd time, but at the 2 other incidents when you had to line up where and what evaluation tool you used, we were always the only ones that utilized Strong. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Martins, for all the hard work in the committee. I know this was a long haul, but even as a school board ourselves, we were unhappy with our own evaluation tool and overhauled it recently. And again, just the self-evaluation part and just being able to really define some things is so important for that feedback for the teachers. So we trust your judgment. You are eating, living, breathing, evaluating. So I'm in full support of what you guys think is best. So thanks for your work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for putting in the time and effort and recognizing the need for this and pushing through despite a lot of the obstacles that you came and encountered. I'm excited to see it. I hated it whenever I worked here. I hate it in the district I'm in right now. They're still with strong. It sounds like it's a good tool to help teachers grow, and I don't know any teachers that just don't need that feedback and want to get better, and to make it very clear of the expectations. But beyond being better in the classroom, I can also see it making relationships with administration better too, because there's just always that, hey, in the classroom, hey, that's great, I loved your lesson plan. We go to read or your implementation of the lesson, we read our feedback, well, you could have done this better and that, and you're like, what? You just told me I did it well, and it was all that subjective feedback in those standards. So I love that we're going to have something better for these teachers and look forward to better teaching and better relationships in our district.
So just into your comment, we appreciate your support. I wanted to be like the me too. I'm like, hate it as well. But one of the things we really liked about this instrument as well is that teachers get or staff, your certified staff, has a score all along. So you get this rating of where you stand for each of the domains, whereas with the strong instrument, everybody's caught by surprise at the end. And so they get this great feedback that may or may not have a bias because it is very ambiguous. At the end, everybody's like, well, what do you mean I'm just effective? I thought I was like highly effective. And then, so there's no longer the surprise at the end when we do their summative. They know all along exactly where they stand, which I think everybody wants to know where they stand. They don't ever want to be caught by surprise. So it's another highlight of the Danielson model.
Thank you. That's a great point. When I would hear from teachers, that would honestly be the number one complaint that I hear from teachers, and is that exactly that. I got all this great feedback. I was told how wonderful I am, and then I get the score later. And then what do? How do I go about that? And so that would be one of the biggest concerns that I would hear regarding teachers and their evaluation. So I really appreciate that. And that they have the self-evaluation tool. I think those are very important and very interesting so that you can come together, because the lens of someone, how they're doing, and the lens of someone who's evaluating are very different. And we know typically when you're required to do self-evaluation, you're harder on yourself, but it helps clear up misunderstandings. And I was doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing, and I thought I was doing it well, and then that generates that conversation to help them improve. And so I think that that's really important, because that's where you find a lot of misunderstandings, is when they're doing their own self-evaluation. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. So that then helps, like Mrs. Anderson say, build that relationship with their administrator and not the animosity with their administrator. So definitely appreciate that.
Just want to take another moment before these ladies leave to just say, again, how instrumental they were and how thankful I was that they were willing to jump on board and take this, because it was rough. There was a lot of things that were going on between the end of the 17-18 year and then as we embarked on the 18-19, and really ever since then. So really thankful for this group of women who took the lead and shared, as well as all the committee members and their different roles as they played throughout the whole process. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I think you guys hold a record now for the longest committee before a recommendation. So yes, thank you for sticking with it. We appreciate that. All right, then we're going to go ahead and go on to human resources.
Pardon me. So tonight I'm presenting to you the ESI quarterly update. We started this process last year in which the board approves in our PO and expenditures overall the amount that we're going to pay for our subs, certified and classified, as well as for other areas in which we might need Educational Services, Inc. to provide us. This is just our quarterly update thus far in terms of what we've spent and what has been what's remaining out of our total allocation that was approved from the board initially. So you could see on there it's $236,218.86. We have 1.2 million that was approved and just under $1 million that's left. So that should certainly cover us, hopefully, knock on wood, things won't change for the rest of the school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Martins. Has there been any conversation on, I know we talk about when another teacher covers a class for a sub job, basically, and we are reimbursing them for their time that they sub that class. What about like in our long-term subs cases where another teacher is coming alongside the long-term sub and helping with entering grades and doing those kind of activities? Has there been any grumblings or talk in Higley about doing any kind of compensation for those teachers that are doing that on top of, they're not the sub, we have the sub for the class, but the content, the other teachers are coming alongside that sub and helping in areas of grading or things like that, because it might not be their complete subject.
Certainly,
Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Board
I'm
Member
sorry.
Taylor. No, you do make sense. So yes, we do. We have what we call our in-house coverage, essentially, and that happens at the secondary level when a teacher oversees somebody else's class during their prep period, and that gets paid out. We've arranged it to where we're paying out more frequently. Before we paid it out just at the end, and we did increase it quite significantly going into the school year. It had previously been $18 an hour for teacher coverage. Now it's, or section, not hour. Now it's $25, so that's huge. Interestingly enough, yes, at the end of last school year, I was at a site in which this incident did occur, to where we had a situation where we had what we called our rescue subs, where they were covering a class and they'd been covering for a long period in one particular class. And unfortunately, the dynamics of what had happened, there weren't curriculum planning left for that individual to the capacity to the level of which the teacher who was absent had to extend their time. I've not heard any other specific rumblings since then. You know, you've heard in our superintendent's report that you've seen in discussion with some teachers departing because of things that they've said that personal, they've no longer been able to handle the classroom for a variety of reasons, whether it's personal impacts to them and or just the nature of the stress in the classroom. And so through that, we've had some dialogue at the secondary level in terms of some curriculum planning and making sure that we're able to compensate if we have no curriculum, but we can certainly dialogue a little bit more with Ed Services to see how much is happening and where we might go from there.
Thank you. I just think it's something to think about in those long-term sub positions that may not have everything totally ready, and then the math department or the English department is coming alongside that sub, which I love and so appreciate, but if they're giving up their time to also take care of that class, I would greatly appreciate thinking about some kind of compensation for them. Just food for thought, if it happens.
Especially if they're uploading like Canvas materials and such. I've heard some grumblings of Canvas, like they're having to update the other teacher's Canvas to keep it fresh and going.
Any other questions? All right. Then we will, thank you for that update. We'll go on to 7.5, which is an information item on our policy revisions.
President Reese, members of the board, if you'll recall, we are on policy patrol, and what we're trying to do is make sure that in every legislative session, there are components that are added, and we have to make sure that our policies are up to date and are in alignment with the law. And as you know, as a member of ASBA, we receive policy updates where they make recommendations and we review them. Tonight we have 4 policies, and these are pretty straightforward policies. As you'll see that GCB, GCF, GCH, and IHA all are just updating our policies to make sure that the most recent legislation that was put in place is reflected in our policies here. In most cases, these are straight additions, adoptions, right from the recommendation, so that our policies in these areas stay up to date and are in line with the law. Always know that if and ever we were to ever modify a policy, any change we make, we then run through our legal counsel to make sure we didn't add or change something that would now make our policy illegal. These are pretty much a direct reflection of ASBA's. They would all be copyrighted with the exception of GCH, which we changed the wording from self-improvement opportunities to our title of our, because they were referring to employee assistance resources. We used our term for that. We also added the handling of bodily fluids and bloodborne pathogens, because legislatively we're supposed to offer that every year anyhow, and we do. So again, these are pretty straightforward, keeping our policies in line with the legislative updates, and then you've seen any changes are marked in blue or red or struck out. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
No questions? All right.
The policy committee is alive and well and meeting monthly as we dive into some of those that require a little bit more work as we work on our artifacts or exhibits that support those processes and procedures.
Okay, then we'll move on to 8.1. I move that we approve the policy revisions as they've been presented to us.
Second.
Oh, you can have it.
Oh, hey.
Michelle Anderson.
I'll take it.
Since we just talked about this, any other questions, comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. We'll go on to 8.2. I move that we approve Mrs. Reach to give a yes vote to the ASBA Proposal A to add to create a seat for the Board of Directors for the Hispanic and Native American interests can be represented simultaneously.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, concerns, comments regarding, just a quick note through the ASBA, there is one seat for the Hispanic and Native American caucus, and they alternate. So this will create an additional seat on the Board of Directors so that they can have a representative at the same time, and so they will no longer alternate.
I think this one has been around for like 22 years where they alternated back and forth, and now they finally want to do that they each get their own seat. I think it's a great idea from my understanding of it.
Long overdue.
Yeah, I felt like it, but I didn't know what everyone else's opinions kind of were. But I thought it was great.
Yes, and so it would change a bylaw within the ASBA so that they do need to have a majority vote here, so.
I believe Maricopa gets 2 seats, if I'm correct. When they talked about this, that we get 2 seats since we're such a large district or county, and then they want 2 seats for these 2 new seats as well, instead of just the single seat.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Mrs. Reach, if you'll submit our vote to change that bylaw. Thank you. All right. Any Any other future agenda items?
Do we need to look at policy, or like I brought it up about the review of the safety procedures, that it needs to be done in such a time and so often, to make sure that or to consider that being a part of policy, making sure that that gets implemented? Or
Yeah, with Mr. Walker, I don't know that we need to add it to our future agenda items, that the safety plan would be at least reviewed once a year with the board of any changes, anything like that. We discussed that that was a requirement within our executive session. And so we would like to just make sure, similar, Mrs. Reach, of what we do for many of our other items, and Dr. Foley, you've been calendaring certain things that we need to look at certain times of the year, that this just get added on there as well. So annually, it is reviewed with the board.
Yes, President Reese, Member Anderson. Yes, we are. There are annual things that we create a calendar for that we know that we annually have to bring, and then what we do sometimes is also pair appropriate presentations and things for that. And one of the new things that we've implemented too is executive summaries at the end of every one of these. That is even our own, if you will, outline for everything that we've done and when we've done it. So we have a historical record from now on. So we have a working calendar, monthly topics. Some of them are legislatively driven, like these policies, expectations are, and others are just requirements that we should be discussing, or timely topics. And then obviously these are other pieces that are upcoming that are embedded in there as well. So this is our annual, it's on our annual calendar.
I just bring it up just because of oversight from previously, and that it's pretty dang important, and it encompasses a lot.
We have a document now of our annual topics and when they are historically addressed.
Thank you. And I just want to follow up, if you can just give us a follow-up in our status report from our public speaker tonight.
Yes.
Obviously, we don't get details on any student situation or anything like that, but to ensure that there's been contact made, and then any follow-up that would need to happen, or recommendations to Mr. Walker, since he handles all of our safety plans, that if we can just get an update in status that that's been addressed, that would be great.
It will be there.
Any other information?
Just to verify, Dr. Foley, the course guide is coming to us as an information item only on November 17th, correct?
Correct. And then the following one in December you approve. So Mr. Lotzenhauser and his amazing team have been working. I said it wrong today. Dr. Lotzenhauser and his amazing team have been working very hard on the course guide, and you will be reading a lot in status this week of some of the main changes, curriculum alignment, status updates. Mrs. Richards and I have had multiple meetings with him this week looking at those changes, and that's coming. So you're going to get a summary overview of the work from the committee that's happened, and this committee has worked really hard. And then in the December one, you'll approve that course guide so that it's ready to rock and roll for registration.
I believe the course guide is pretty long, correct? Is it already in board docs for the new members to start looking through? Because I remember the first year, I was pretty shocked about how long it took for me to read through that. Just a reminder to maybe the new board members that that one's a long read.
And the committee is finalizing some of those changes. As soon as it's ready, you'll also see what they'll upload as a tracked changes document, so you'll be able to easily see additions and deletions, but you'll also have update and status of kind of some of the themes and areas you're going to see more work than not. And one note in particular, you'll be reading and learning about that HVA obviously is one of the other course guides you'll be looking at, and it's a little bit different now that we are implementing it and understand how it works and what we do and don't, how we will and won't do things as we've built our true AOI. So there'll be a lot of new work to look at there as well. So you will have lots of information on course guides, middle school, high school, and the virtual academy.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Mr. Moore, I know you have your work cut out for you now. You gotta be creative, and I have faith in you and your team, and look forward to what you'll be bringing us. So I appreciate all your work and effort in that. And with that said, I move that we adjourn. Bueller, anyone?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Have a good evening.
We were 600.
So we increased down. How many more votes? Because I didn't pull it. I was trying to.
Compare. It wasn't wrong.